out a little bit away from my device in particular and actually look more broadly at the process of going from a prototype to a product. In my opinion, this execution process is actually the majority of the entrepreneurship happens. Prototypes demonstrate technology. In my case, in the workhorse prototype, that demonstrated that you can visualize hard sounds using a phone. But the product, on the other hand, has to be producible 1,000 times over. Has to perform the same every time. It has to perform in a real-world environment. And the process from going from one to the other, I think, is often the largest challenge in entrepreneurship. And the first piece, I think, that is funding. A lot of companies actually get stuck at this stage, and we almost did. It took us almost a year to get funding. When companies cannot develop without money, that's one of the most important aspects. The reality is that you need to have, especially as you get farther and farther in the process, money becomes a larger and larger restrictor of how much can you pursue commercialization. But when you go looking for funding at the same time, I think the more you go in with, the more you get out. That's to say, if you come in with a simple prototype versus just an idea, you have a lot more leverage in getting that funding. This is because you have a lot more proof that your idea is actually worthwhile. For us, we went into the funding process with a prototype, quite a bit of media attention, which gave us some degree of legitimacy, and pre-orders. We had people who essentially were already saying that we want the product. And this way we were actually able to save quite a bit of equity when we got our funding. We also got a lot of our funding actually from angel investors. So a lot of people think about funding venture capital. And these are large institutions that will put in large sums of money. For us, we actually found the best funding to be with actually physicians, people in the physician community. And we were actually, thus far, we've been able to raise about 1.75 million in funding. The other thing is to think it's really important to stay as lean as possible. That is to say, to try to, put it this way, even if you get a large opportunity for funding early on, I think the longer that the company can stay, can think about the right funding that they need, the sufficient runway, and they're able to keep their costs down low, it allows the company to save a lot of equity. You as founders can save quite a bit that way. And the last thing here, I think that a lot of people, and a lot of venture capitalists, angel investors, I think a lot of people realize that the team is as important as the idea itself. That is to say, the team are the people who are actually building the product. I mentioned a prototype and a product are different things. And the product can only come out well if the team involved are committed. And I think people who provide money are very sensitive to this point, and I think validly so. I said there's something else big that comes up in funding. People often talk about things like business plans, market analysis, financial models, sales projections, which they have some value. But at the same time, I also think that this is actually a bit of a distraction, particularly for very early stage companies. When a company is really just starting out, in my opinion, what's really at the crux of everything is the idea, product, the prototype, and the team. And the ability to generate those, and the ability to create a product that has the potential to actually impact people. If we could really, very early on, make an accurate financial model, and we can make an accurate sales projection, people would be betting their houses on their products, right? You'd be putting all your money into it. You should really have a perfectly accurate set of models. And so a lot of times I think investors will look for these, and I think a lot of times it's overemphasized because I think it's a way of justifying, right? You're putting a large amount of money into a company. It's a way of logically justifying it. But in my opinion, especially early on, it's really important to not let these distract from the product itself. I think good products make good companies. I think that's really at the crux of everything that entrepreneurship is about. And very early on, it's important not to lose that focus. And the best investors, in my opinion, will understand that when it's a very early stage, it's really intuition around the product. I think that drives a lot of what entrepreneurs do. The team itself. This was the other big thing I think in starting a company. For us, it also took about a year. It took about a year to get funding, actually, because we had to find. Really was for us finding the right investors. In the same way, the team actually takes a while. The team for us is people like industry experts, it's actually physicians, engineers, both software and hardware, lawyers, all these types of people. But I think the key here is that the team are the people who build the product. That is to say that the engineers themselves, if they don't have a good sense of the whole product and the whole vision, or for that matter, if they're not particularly driven, I think that actually impacts the product. That hurts the product. Products are so much about making small, practical decisions. The people who make those are the team themselves who are actually designing and building. And that's, I think, is really important. For us, within the first year, we probably had an 80% turnover in trying to find the right people. Now, we've managed to stay lean, actually, in primarily using contractors. So much of our company, all of our engineers and everything, we have a team of really it's around 15 people right now. And the vast majority of them are contractors. What that does is that allows us to be really flexible in how much time we use for different people and allow the right people to do the right work at the right time. But as I mentioned, the team builds the product. And I strongly believe that the product is really at the center of everything that entrepreneurs do. The product is key. Companies themselves, the team, and the funding, all of it is there, I think, to support the product. The product is ultimately what we give to the customer. And I think good products make good companies. I think the best way to look at that actually is an example. So before there was Apple, there was a company called Brown. So Brown in the 1950s and the 1960s became a really household name. And they became a household name because of the quality of the products that they built. They were known at the time for things that Apple is known for today. Being intuitive and elegant, simple, minimalist. This is one of the radios that they built. This was a radio and record player. This is one of their electric shavers. This one actually made a big impact on the industrial design world at the time. So all of these products, I think, when you look at them, granted they're also photographed in a very nice way, but I do think that they have a great deal of elegance built into the way that they operate, in that they're intuitive. This, in fact, Apple even took from some of Brown's design. This is a very famous calculator that Brown released. Apple's initial calculator app actually, I think, really paid homage to this design. All this was led, I think, by Dieter Rams. So Dieter Rams was a big-time industrial designer. He was the main design lead at Brown. And he had really 10 principles for good design. If you're interested, I would really recommend looking at all 10 principles that he has. And they really don't take too much to go through. But there are 3 that I think are really impactful. Good design is innovative, it's honest, it's as little design as possible. The good design is innovative, I think, is a pretty clear principle. That's the idea that any good product, any well-designed product, must present some valuable technology. And I think, especially in today's sort of high, Silicon Valley style entrepreneurship, that's becoming increasingly clear. And I think that's pretty natural. The second one, the third one, though, I think are even more relevant today. That good design is honest and as little design as possible. When design is honest, it's very clear what a product does. So that's to say the product cannot promise more than it can do. And it should be very clear about the way it does what it does. This makes intuitive products. I think software is particularly prone to breaking this principle. Software can easily overpromise. They can become cluttered with extra features, a lot of times which don't really work particularly well. And I think a lot of people are familiar with bad software. Apps in particular, actually, I think have become a good example of this. When design is really honest, when it focuses on the feature, and it really narrows what it does, and it does that really well, that's what really builds good products. And when it does that, then it becomes as little design as possible, because it becomes a natural and almost organic thing.